Hello, my name is Beck and welcome to the Brandy Sandy book tag. I have created this tag. This is an original video because Brandon Sanderson is one of my favorite authors and I wanted to share that enthusiasm with you. And the questions in here, there are 10 of them. You don't have to have read Sanderson in order to do this tag, and there's also no spoilers for any of Sanderson's books. So you can do this tag if you like. If you're a fantasy reader, you'll probably benefit from being a fantasy reader because you might find a question or two a little bit easier to answer if you read fantasy. But let's get into the tag. Question number 1 is Way of Kings. What is a hyped up book that you've been meaning to get to but you just haven't? And my answer for this is pretty much the same answer for the last couple of years, and that is A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. I've just been avoiding it because it seems scary. Not because of the size, because I read a ton of books that are longer, but because of the fact that it's probably going to emotionally sucker punch me. So I keep putting it off and I need to just sit down and read it, but I keep purposely picking up other stuff that is also longer than A Little Life so that I can feel accomplished, even though it's still sitting there unread and has been for a while. Question number 2 is Mistborn. Name a book with a magic system in it that you really loved. And this is where you will really benefit if you are a fantasy reader. And my answer for this is The Black Prism. I really love the magic in here because it revolves around colour. It's quite intricate and complex. And even though you learn it through a character's eyes and you see other characters using it, everyone uses it in a different way. Each colour has a different property. And also if you use this magic system, it taps into your life force. So the more you use it, the more you can break your halo and become a monster, basically. And that is the bare bones of this magic system, but it's one that I really thoroughly enjoyed and I want more people to read this series. So if you are keen for a magic system that's really complicated, but a book that has writing that's really accessible, then I would definitely recommend this book series to you. Question number 3 is work in progress. So Brandon Sanderson has a progress bar on his website where he lists where he's at with each of his drafts of each of his books. So this question is, what is a book series that is currently in progress that you're looking forward to the next installment or the conclusion for? For me, I'm really looking forward to the next Bone Season book, which I have right here. The next book I think is coming out in August this year and I'm really psyched to get into it because it's been a little bit of a break between The Song Rising and the next book. So this is an urban fantasy series that's set in London. It's kind of like a dystopian urban fantasy where clairvoyance is a criminal offence, where our main character Paige has a clairvoyant ability where she can kind of invade other people's minds but not for very long, and she ends up getting kidnapped by this underground society and taken off to a camp where she's forced into being a slave. So that is the premise of the first book. There's a whole bunch of political cool stuff going on and it's a very fast-paced book, but it's also very detailed. So you need to focus on reading this book, but it gets better with every installment in the series. And I'm so excited for the next one because Samantha Shannon wrote this when she was like 19 and she's in her mid to late 20s now. So she's really grown as a person and a writer. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how much the fourth book has grown from the first one. Question number 4 is Spensa. So Spensa is the main character in Skyward and she's quite stubborn, but she grows a lot over the course of the book. So name a character that you adore the growth of in a book. Even though I wrote this question, I'm having trouble thinking of an answer. I'm probably going to go with a Brandon Sanderson character actually. I don't know if that's a cop-out or not, but I really like the growth of Shallan in the Way of Kings series. It's a very complicated series to describe, but Shallan starts off as a very humble character with not a lot of wealth and she goes off to become a scholar, but she's also kind of potentially there to steal something as well. So it's interesting to see her at such a base level compared to where she is now, and obviously I'm not going to spoil it, but I just love the progression of her character and all of the ones in The Way of Kings. Question number 5 is Alloy of Law. Name a book or series that you would like to revisit. I really like J. Kristoff's Nevernight series, but the story is very much complete now. All 3 books are out, but the world was so different to ours, and so I'd like to see more exploration within that world, potentially with other characters. I don't think he has plans to go back to it, so this is very much a pipe dream of mine, but I just like the lengths he went to in the world, the fact that there are 3 suns there. It's obviously never night, hence the title of the first book, and there are Darkins, which are characters that can control shadows, and it's just a really interesting dark world and I want to see more of it, but I'm just going to probably have to reread Nevernight. Question number 6 is White Sand. Do you like reading graphic novels? If you don't, do you have one that you're potentially wanting to pick up? And if you do, what is your favorite at this current moment? I haven't read a lot of graphic novels recently, which is my bad, but they're just quite expensive if you're not going to your local library. But I have been meaning to get more of the Paper Girls graphic novels. I've read the first maybe 3. I'd have to check my Goodreads to confirm, but case in point, I haven't touched this series in a little while, and it's like a contemporary / science fiction, and there's a bit of time travel and interesting characters in here. It's about this group of paper girls, and they are doing their paper delivery route, and they discover something very sci-fi, and then it launches off from there, and it's just a very interesting premise. There's a lot of crisscrossing of timelines and interacting of different characters from different periods of time too. So this is a very, very interesting series. It's by the same author who wrote Saga, which is a very popular comic book on BookTube. So if you like his work and you like his plot, then you're probably going to like Paper Girls as well. So I'm intending to continue this very soon. Question number 7 is Legion. So Brandon Sanderson writes stuff outside of the fantasy genre like science fiction, which is what Legion is. So name a book outside of your favorite genre that you really, really enjoyed. For me, I usually read fantasy. I do read a little bit of sci-fi on the side and apocalyptic fiction as well. So it's a bit difficult to name something that's outside of my favorite if I consider those 3 my favorite, because they make up like 99% of the things I read. I might have to throw back a couple of years because I read a book called Queens of Geek by Jen Wilde. It's got a beautiful pink cover, and it's about these 3 friends who go to a pop culture convention, and one of them's like a famous YouTube star, one of them is the best friend who is in tow, and then another is the guy best friend who is in tow as well. So they all attend based on her ticket because she gets them in. There's female-female relationship in there, there's great anxiety representation, and it's just a real cute story. So it's a really good palate cleanser if you're reading a lot of dark fantasy back to back, which is what I was doing, I think, at the time. So it was just a really pretty cute thing to pick up. Question number 8 is Catalogue, and it is no secret that Brandon Sanderson has a huge catalogue. He's written so many different types of books. So name a book on your TBR that is really intimidating. Usually for this question I would say A Little Life, but I've already said that at the start, so I'm probably going to go for The Undivided by Jennifer Fallon, just because I haven't heard anyone talk about it. It's not really a hyped up book, which doesn't mean it's a bad book at all, but I just don't really have any opinions to riff off when I'm going into it. So I'm going into it pretty much blind, pretty much zero expectations. So I really hope I like it. It is a big book, so it's a commitment as well. But that's why I'm intimidated, just because I've heard no buzz about it and I've heard no chatter about it really. Question number 9 is Elantris, which is a standalone, so name a standalone that you would recommend. And this is probably cheating, but I'm going to recommend a Sanderson book, but it's a novella, so it's very short. It's called Snapshot, which is an adult sci-fi novella, and it follows these 2 cops who go into a snapshot, which is basically like a capturing of time, like a bubble almost, and they go in there and everything in that bubble is replayed of the previous day, and that's how they're trying to solve this crime. So they interact with things in this snapshot, and those things have a ripple effect as they would in real time. So they get to see the real courses of action that people would potentially have gone down, so they can track down where the crime happened, where the murder weapon was, and all of that kind of thing, who is involved. It's a really interesting concept, and I really enjoyed Snapshot, so that's why I'm recommending it. Also because it's not part of Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere, so you don't have to read a whole bunch of books to see a recurring character show up or understand the way the different worlds he's written interlink. It's a really easy way to see if you like his writing style. So Snapshot is one that I would push on people to at least give a try. And then finally, question number 10 is also a recommendation. So I would recommend everyone read Sanderson. He's got so many different variations of book that it's probably fairly easy to pick out something you would like adult fantasy, young adult fantasy, science fiction, dystopian, graphic novels, and middle grade as well with The Rhythmatist and Alcatraz and the Evil Librarians. He's done so much. So the last question is recommend a book that you want more people to read. I did just recommend Snapshot, so I feel like it's double cheating if I recommend a Sanderson book at the end, so just please go and pick up his work. But I actually have 2 books for the last question. So first up, I've got Trader's Blade by Sebastian de Castell. If you haven't heard me rave about this series, you've probably just discovered my channel, so welcome. But this is a adult fantasy series. It's a fairly palatable series in terms of length, and it's from the perspective of a main character named Falcio, and it's kind of got like a Three Musketeers vibe because his king a few years ago was murdered, and now him and a couple of friends who are greatcoats, who are basically like trained lawmen but also sword fighters, that they are now out on the road because they don't have a job anymore, because their job was to guard the king and to enforce his laws basically, and they can't do that anymore. So they're trying to figure out the way that their life is going to go. And at the beginning of this book, they kind of fall into a situation that doesn't work out well for them. And so that's kind of the tone of the book. They keep getting themselves into situations that they need to get themselves out of. So I really enjoyed this book. It was a lot of fun. It was funny, and I would recommend it. I have recommended it heaps, and I'm not going to stop recommending it until more people read it. Also, the audiobook is really, really good. So if you can get onto that, I would encourage you to. And then next is Record of a Spaceborn for You by Becky Chambers. This made my favorites of 2019 video, and this is the third book in her Wayfarers series. You can read this one on its own, even though it's the third in a series, and there are mentions of the other two books, but they're not overt, so if you don't know the context of the previous books, you won't get spoiled. This is a very soft space opera. It's very diverse, and it's just very emotive and beautiful, and I really struggled to describe the plot because it's very, very character driven. So if you like character driven work, then you will like this. I was never disengaged from the plot just because it was character driven. It had a loose plot going at the back of it, but it was definitely character focused. So these two are the books that I am going to leave you on. These are my recommendations. Obviously, Brandon Sanderson is a recommendation as well, but thank you so much for watching. If you decide to do this tag, please let me know in the comments or on my Twitter or Instagram. I've got everything linked down below in the description for you. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for participating, and I'll catch you in my next video. Bye.